Good morning, everybody. I am sorry for the late start, but there was a problem with my internet connection first. Today I'm using the university router, so from time to time I might drop. Okay, let me see if this one continues, otherwise I'm going to. Okay. So the last time, again, we started talking about the constructors and other tools. We talked about the constructors then, okay? We talked about the constructors definition, how we call the constructors. Then we talked about const function and inline functions. And now today we are going to talk about static members, static class members, what they mean and where we use them. Okay, let's go back to the last slide that we that we analyzed last time. Okay, we talked about this member initializer, but again, before I forget, I think that this was the let me open this. Okay, so 7.4. I think we were looking at this and we made some changes, and we looked at the somebody's making a noise. Where does that noise come? Okay, here, I found it. We looked at this class definition, and we looked at all the members, function members, and data members, and the private function members. And in fact, we wrote two new function members that correspond to is larger and welcome. And I think I modified stuff that too. Yeah, okay, yeah. I forgot to save it. Maybe is it something 5? Yeah. See, I added these two functions, this one and this one, which are functionally very similar to these global functions. And we added them as our data function members to our class. Of course, we like line 30 and 31 better than line 49 and 50, even though they are functionally the same. They are doing the same thing. You can achieve the same thing by writing programs, but writing this way is much better in terms of object-oriented programming principles, because you are applying the rule of encapsulation. Okay, this is my data. Okay, this is my data. As a customer, you get to work on that data using only these public functions. Okay, nothing else, nothing less. That's it. Okay, you cannot add, or I am not going to add global functions that will work on that data, because the global functions, they don't have access to this private data. If there are global functions, they have to use a public interface, which will make them inefficient. Okay, so this is our main function, and remember this 59 and 60. We said that we prefer the line number 60 because it is more object oriented, but line number 59 works if you like to write it that way. But as I said, in that case, if you are writing line number 59, you are writing C code, not C++ code. Okay, doesn't matter if you are using the C++ compiler. So we looked at this is larger. We looked at the output, a nicely formatted output, and we looked at the constructors. Okay, we said that in the data initialization section, you can get the dollars parse and the cent parse of the balance. Okay, balance is our parameter to the constructor, and I take the dollars part and the cents part. That is the integer part and the decimal part of the double. And remember, these two functions are our private functions. And then I have the other constructor. This one doesn't use any initialization section because it needs to use the set balance and set rate. Okay, we did not. Okay, this is update function. Of course, this is a non-const function because it is modifying these two stuff. Okay, so account dollars plus account cents times 0.01. So everything is in dollars now. Then I calculate the interest, multiply it with balance, add it to the balance, and update the dollars and cents part. And this is my input. Okay, just give me the balance as double. Okay, so I get the dollars part and cents part and put them in correct places. And set balance is just this. Set balance takes the integer part and the decimal part. Set balance that works with two integers. Again, remember the comment in our constructor. Constructor said that if you are going to give me dollars and cents and integers, they both have to be either greater than 0 or less than 0. Okay, if you have a negative balance, both dollars and cents should be less than 0. If you have positive balance, then both of them should be greater than or equal to 0. Okay, so if you do it the other way, one of them is greater than 0 and the other one is less than 0, then that's the inconsistent data. It shouldn't work. Okay, so whatever we do in our bank account class, we always make sure that we follow these rules, and our customers cannot do just the opposite. Our customers have to behave this way. Okay, if they behave in a different way, if they use a set balance with inconsistent data, if they call the constructor with the inconsistent data, then I terminate my program. So what did I say? Okay, the main job of the constructor is to initialize objects, class objects. That's true. But at the same time, one of the other things that the constructor do is the data validation. Validate your input. Validate the consistency of your data. Okay, this is what I do with the consistency. Okay, if you look at all of my constructors, it calls this set balance, this one. But in this case, you don't have to call set balance because the cents are already 0. So there is no positive negative thing. And I don't have the same problem with the double balance because double numbers are either positive or negative. Okay, that's one thing about the constructor. Set rate, again, you cannot have a rate less than 0%. Okay, interest rates cannot be smaller than 0. It has to be equal to or greater than 0. If it is that way, then I set it. Otherwise, I terminate my program. Again, cents parts. This one is the function, private function that we don't expose to outside world. Well, I felt that, okay, this shouldn't be part of the class because this one, I mean, if you look at this class implementation, the function implementation, you don't see any reference to the class member data. Okay, all it needs is this amount, multiplies that amount with 100 double cents, and gets the absolute round of the cents as integer cents. Okay, then checks the amount less than 0 and etc. So it needs all the data from the parameter, so it looks like a global function actually. But since we don't want to write global functions in C++, I made it part of my class. But what does the encapsulation say? Encapsulation say that bring your data and the functions that work on that data together in a C capsule. We call it encapsulation. It doesn't say that add any other functions that you think it is necessary to the class. It doesn't say that. Encapsulation say that only the data and the the functions that work on that data should be part of the class. So what am I going to do with this function? I don't want to make it private, so I don't want to make it closed, so I made it private in my class. It sits there. We will find a solution for that one later during the semester. Okay. Sometimes, again, C++ is not a pure object-oriented programming language. Sometimes we have to make some compromises in the name of making it compatible with C, also in the name of efficiency and etc. This is something that we are doing. We know that it is not right to do it this way, but for now we don't have any solution, and I will introduce some mechanisms to make this kind of acceptable as a object-oriented programming technique. Okay, so that was it, I guess, this whole program bank account, and we will come to this in the next chapter when we do the operator overloading. Okay, good. So what is the difference 7.5 and 7.6? What is 7.6? Oh, 7.6 is this. Okay, I am not going to. Okay, get. I don't like 7.6. 7.5 is better. Go back to our slides again. Okay, we talked about the member initializers. C++ introduces another mechanism for the constructor. It is called constructor delegation. Suppose you have more than one constructor, and one of the constructors needs to call the other constructor to complete its job. You can do that. It is called constructor delegation. Okay, this constructor here, let's say you have a class named coordinate. It needs one x and y value. This one will take both, okay, and it sets them using the initialization section. This one doesn't take any parameters, no parameter constructor. So this one immediately calls the constructor that takes two parameters. So I just make the default coordinates 99, 99. So you may get help from the other constructors while writing your overloaded constructors. And if you follow the same idea here with our nice bank account class, let's see what I can do with these constructors. Yeah, these are my constructors. So can I call one of them within the, okay, maybe this one, yeah. So instead of writing this line, maybe I can write, you tell me what. Get rid of these, just call bank account, and 0, 0, 0.0. Okay, that's it. So do this, yeah. So I am not setting anything myself. I am just using what? I am using this constructor here. Okay, and maybe I can do the same thing with this one too, right? And this one can call again this one, because ends cents are going to be 0 anyway. So let me do it again with this one. Copy these two lines. What am I doing wrong? Yeah, and comment this out. And here I am going to say, okay, bank account $0 rate. Okay, and get rid of this set rate. So this is called constructor delegation. You are getting help from the other constructors that you had already written. So this is good. Instead of repeating the same code, remember I was repeating the same code, set rate and etc. I am not repeating anything, I am just doing this. Can I do the same thing here? Well, if I force it a little bit, maybe I could, because this is already yeah. Well, I don't like what I am doing here, but if I have to, I can do the same thing here too. What am I gonna do now? I am going to, instead of writing this, I will do bank account, this dollars part 1, right? And account cent, no, cents part, no, dollars part and cents part, raise it and balance, and comma rate. Get rid of this one. So I am getting the dollars part and cents part and the rate, and I am sending it to the bank account, which is here. So in effect, I have written only one constructor. All other 3 constructors use the available constructor. Okay, copying and pasting and using the same code is a bad thing. You know the problems with copy paste code, right? So so you like to write a single copy of the code, and the others should call the other the original one, instead of copying and pasting and repeating the same code over again. So I think this is what I did. Okay, this one calls bank account, and bank account, all nicely delegated. This is called constructor delegation. Again, it is available in C++11. Okay, so by the way, it says that the default constructor, this is not default constructor. Default constructor is the one written by the compiler for you, okay? This is what? What is this?
No parameter constructor.
Exactly, this is no parameter constructor. Default constructor is a no parameter constructor, yes, but not all the constructors that doesn't have any parameters are called default constructors. This is no parameter constructors, okay? So let's talk about these static members. Okay, the classes can have static data and function members. Okay, do you remember the C keyword static? You have seen it, right? Did they show you? So if you remember it, let me show you. This is pure C. Okay, there's nothing new in C++. If I have a function f, and let's say it doesn't take any parameter, if I have a static integer k whose initial value is 0, let's say every time I call this function f, k is incremented by 1, I do something, okay, and I return k. Well, why do I? Okay, I don't do anything. Just that's 3 lines of code. Static k and k plus plus and return k. So how does the function behave? It behaves like k is never deleted. It is always in the memory. Whether you call the function and you call it 15 times, doesn't matter. Every time you call function k, okay, it remembers the previous value and it increments it by 1 and returns it. So this k will be incremented, the same k will be incremented as long as you keep calling this function f. Every time you call function f, it will return 1 incremented value. It will return first 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So it looks like k never dies, right? K never dies. You remember this, right? You guys don't remember? Who remembers it then? Some people said. So you learned it from Yakub Hoca, right?
No.
You learned it from somewhere else?
Yes.
Who are you guys? You are graduate students?
Yeah.
Okay, so our students don't know this, okay? So this static, well, they don't teach this anymore because we don't like this kind of behavior, okay? I'm going to tell you why. So this k, this variable k, because it is static, keeps its value. Doesn't matter if you are in function f or you are outside of function f. It keeps its value. When you call this function f again, okay, when you call this function f again, it remembers that value. So in a way, it behaves like a global variable, right? I mean, if I did this, instead of writing this, if I write the other way, for example, what do I mean by, okay, take this out and put it in here, yeah, and make this a global. I have a global k, okay. This code and this code has exactly the same effect. Okay, so what then you will say, what is the difference between these two? This k is only accessible in this scope. This k is accessible in the file scope because it's a global variable, right? So it behaves exactly the same way, but the nice thing is that you cannot modify k outside the function f. Okay, that was the meaning of static keyword, and we don't like the usage of static in modern computers and modern compilers and operating systems, because these kind of functions behave very badly if you are doing multi-programming, multi-threaded application, multi-processing applications. Because if two different processes, two different threads, okay, call f at the same time, one of them will get affected from the other's callings, right? So that will be kind of a race condition, and so we don't like it. So the suggestion is, don't teach these static keyword to newcomers. Don't let them use this static local variables, okay? So if they need to use something like that, maybe they can use the globals. Okay, so this is one side explanation. When we come to C++, the meaning of the static is a little bit different than this. Well, this original static is available, and the static in the C++ sense, okay, it doesn't have any bad side effects like that. So it is, you are free to use them in your programs, no problem. But the philosophy wise, it is almost the same thing. When you say I have a static data member, okay, when you say you have a static data member, okay, it behaves like a global variable, okay. Let me show you one example, okay. One very simple class. This class is named box, okay, very simple one. You don't know the default parameter. Well, we know the default parameter. We have it over there, right? Okay. So this is a very common usage of default arguments. So by doing this, you are saying that I have a, see, oh, the whole constructor is inlined. The whole constructor is inlined. So I have a constructor named box, of course. It will take 3 doubles, length, height, and breadth, okay, or width if you like. And I assign them without doing any validity check, because I mean, maybe I should check if they shouldn't be negative or anything like that, okay. So length, breadth, and height, and they will be assigned. That's fine. And then I have this object count. Object count is, I am going to use that data member, okay, to count the number of boxes that I have created. I am going to count the number of boxes that I have created. But if I increment this object count for a regular data member, since each box object will have its own object count data member, you will increment 0 to 1, and that wouldn't make any sense. But if this object count is a global variable, then all the box objects will have access to that global data, global variable, and they will keep incrementing. But we don't like global variables, so this is what I do. I say that inside this box class, I have length, breadth, and height. Okay, these are regular data members, and this is my static integer data member. Okay, this static integer data member is shared between all the objects of this class box. Okay, so it is all shared by this objects of this class box. For every object, there is one length, breadth, and height, but for all the objects, there is a single object count data member. Okay, it is still a data member, private data member of this class. Okay, nobody outside of this class can have access to it directly. Nobody can modify it. Okay, nobody can modify it. But if you do it in a smart way, you can get what you want. Okay, let's look at this main function. Okay, and there is let's look at these two functions. I have this volume function, regular function. It just multiplies length, breadth, and height. Okay, it returns the value, no problem. And I have this get count function. It returns the object count. Let's look at this main function now. Okay. At the beginning, this is very interesting actually. If you look at this line, without making any objects of this class, I am calling this get count function using the class name. Okay, we never did this before. Okay, calling a function using the class name is something that we never did before, and you couldn't do it actually. You can do it because this get count is a static function. Static functions are special functions, member functions. In this case, it's a public static function, and these functions can work only on the static data members. That's it. Okay, so static functions can work only on the static member variables. This one cannot have access to length, breadth, and height. Opposite is not true. I mean, the regular functions can work on both these data members, also the static data members, but static functions can work only on the static data members. And this one cannot call volume. Okay, this one get count cannot call volume. Volume can call, if it likes, get count. Opposite true, but the other way is not true. Okay, so this is how you call a static function. You call it with the class name. Can anybody tell me why is this possible? I mean, why is it possible to call get count this way, but not possible to call get value that way? You cannot say box, column, get value, okay, or value. All you can say is box, column, get count. I mean, if you are going to call a function like this, it has to be static. The question is, why? Why can't I call box value?
Because we need an instance of it.
Because you need what?
An instance of the class.
Because you need an instance of a class to call the function value. Why? Because function value needs to access this length, breadth, and height data members of the class, right? That's the meaning of value. Value works on the objects. It needs the object data. Get count doesn't work on the non-static data. It works on the static data only. Okay. So static data is shared among all the objects of the same class. So object count exists, doesn't matter if you have any objects of the class or not, okay? At the beginning, I don't have any objects of the class. At the beginning, I don't have any objects of the class, okay? So I cannot get count on any of the objects, but I can call it on the class itself. Later, I make two box objects. Okay, what do you think this will print?
0.
It will print 0. Why? Because at the beginning there was no box created, right? It is 0. But how do you know that this one is 0 at the beginning? I didn't initialize it with anything. I mean, I have a constructor that initializes the length, breadth, and height, and it increments the count by 1, but where is the initial value of object count? It is right here, okay? At the global scope, I say that there is a static object count variable, integer variable inside box, and I'm initializing it with 0. This is an initialization. This is not an assignment. This is a special notation, and you do this in the global scope. You say that there is a object count static data member inside this box class. Its type is integer. I am initializing it with 0. Okay, so this line works before your main function starts. So I have already initialized this object count. Okay.
So we can say the static variables and static functions are created before the program starts.
Before the main
program starts.
Before the main function starts,
Okay.
not program. Okay. So static data members are created before the main function starts.
Okay.
I wouldn't say static functions because functions are already there. Okay.
Yeah.
Functions are already written. They are already formed when you compile your program. Your variables, they are created when your program starts running. But as I said, this is like a global variable. Okay, it's like the static of C. Okay, what did I say? This one and this one are kind of equivalent. The only difference is that the scope of K is only this part. Okay, the same is similar, that object count is like a global. It exists before the main function starts, but it can be accessed only within the class because it's a private data member of the class. The idea is very similar to this one. Okay, so let's go back and let's look at this one. Let's try to, okay, so I have two boxes. Each box will be created, of course, using the constructor, but every time I call the constructor, it will increment this object count by 1, right? It will increment it to first 1, then 2. Then after this, I will say, okay, what is my box get count now? Now this one is supposed to print what? 2, because I have two boxes. Okay, I have two boxes. Because object count is a static data member, and there is only one object count. Let me try to draw the memory configuration for you for this one. Okay, so this is my memory. Okay, at the beginning, before anything starts, there is this object count variable, integer. Okay, it's a, we know it's an object count, integer. Let me say box object count, and its initial value is 0 because before the main started, I initialized it. Then I started running this main function. Main function immediately asks what is the count of just run get count. Get count says that, okay, I am a static function. I will get this object count and I will return it. Object count is 0 and it will print 0. Then I will create two boxes. Box 1. Box 1 has 3 things in it, right? This is box 1. One is 3.3, 1.2, and 1.5. This is box 1. When box 1 is created, I made these assignments, but constructor also incremented object count by 1. So let's increment the object count. It became 1. And then I will make another box. This will be box 2. Okay. 8.5, 6.0, and 2.0. But again, the constructor will do this assignment, and at the end, it will increment this box count by 1 again. Okay, so doesn't matter how many box objects you have. Okay, they will all share the same static data member. Okay, this is the meaning of the static data member. What is the meaning of the static member functions? Static member functions are the functions that can work only on the static data members. Okay. Non-static functions, which is this volume function, also the constructor, can work on whatever they want. They can work on the static data members or the non-static data members. As you see, this constructor, it modifies both non-statics, also the static one. Yes?
When we are initializing object count, why do we put integer again? Doesn't it know it is integer?
Well, it's kind of a syntax issue. I mean, this looks like a global. Let's say, instead of doing this, writing this, let's say k, int k assign 0. It's like a global variable declaration, right? So, I mean, I think they felt that if it is initialized like a global, it behaves like a global actually. So it is more intuitive to remember anything like that, okay? Otherwise, I mean, when you say box object count 0, I mean, at the global level, I think it is more difficult to compile or parse that kind of a language. I don't know why they did it, but it is done that way. Some people say that you are accessing the private data member of a class outside the class, right? That's what they say, okay? Well, this is not exactly true. This is not accessing a value. It is initializing it before the class objects are done. So this kind of a class structure, you might say. So, okay. So, I mean, you cannot repeat the same thing over and over again. Initialization is done only once, okay? So, for the lifetime of your program, not of your objects, I'm talking of your program. For the lifetime of your program, you initialize the static data members only once. Yes?
Could we initialize the static member, data member on the private section? Or
No, it doesn't matter if it is public or private. You have to initialize it once.
Okay, how we can do it in the class?
Well, you don't do it in the class. You do it at the global level. But you remember C++ 11 says that you can initialize your data members like this in C++ 11. So you can initialize your static data members like this, but it is only for C++ 11 and afterwards. Okay, if you are using C++ 98, this is the way to go. Okay. Any questions about statics? Yes.
The line before the main, it only initializes the variable, right?
Yeah, that's purely for initialization of the static data members. Yes.
So it doesn't allocate.
It doesn't.
Allocate.
No. Allocation is done before that line starts. As I said, this is exactly like declaring a global variable k and making it 0 initially. This is very similar. Okay. So we don't like globals, but this is not a global actually. I mean, this is like it behaves. I mean, the life duration of this object count is your whole program. When your program starts running, it just exists. When your program ends, this one dies. Okay, that's like global. That's like global, right? That's like global. But unlike the globals, they can only be accessed within the class. Since they are private, I can access this object count only from this function or from this function or from that function. Okay. Any questions from the online people, Teams people? Nobody's talking today. You guys have any questions? Are you guys hearing me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, so I am going to take 50 minutes of break. Let's be here around 9:31. Or 33, right?
Yok, alınmadı.
So that's how the statics work. So people usually forget about this initialization when they first started using statics. Also, they are confused about what functions should I access the static data members. Always remember, static is something like well, it's not very, analogy is not very correct, but it's like const function and const data member and etc. So you cannot call const functions on you cannot call non-const functions on const data and etc. You know that, right? So the static functions cannot access these non-static data members, but the opposite is of course true. And also you could inside this function volume, I can of course say cout get count. That's okay, right? I can call this. I can make this because this function is a regular function. It has access to regular functions and non-regular static functions, and as similarly, it can do whatever it wants with the regular data members and the static data members. So it's just simple thing. It's just you need to keep it in mind, and you need to write a few programs. So where do we use statics? And we use the statics for these kind of purposes. You are counting the number of objects that you have created so far, right? How many objects is there? How many objects do I have, etc. For these kind of purposes, it is useful, and it is something to learn about C++. And the static mechanism is available in Java and C# in those kind of languages. And it is, I mean, this staticness is part of the object-oriented programming principles. Okay, so don't think that static as like escape from object-oriented programming rules or violation of the object-oriented programming rules. It exists in the language or in the programming philosophy. Okay. In Java, you will see we use statics in many places. Okay, so this example is not from the book. Okay, very simple example. Try to write it yourself. I took it from some other place. Maybe I have written this, I don't remember. The example from the book is a little bit more complicated. Well, it is not complicated, but it is silly. That's why I didn't want to introduce two things at the same time. The silly program on top of static is not a good thing. But let's look at the, since it's a book, let's look at the example from the book. I have a server. Server is in restaurants, in restoranlardaki garsonlar gibi server. Okay, it's a server. Every server has a name, a character name. Okay, I have servers. Let's say server A, B, C, D. Okay, what do the servers do? Okay, they serve one people when somebody comes. If a customer comes, okay, let's say customer, okay, this is my customer. It will be served by A or B or C or D, okay? But if I have, let's say this is my line, these are my customers C1, C2, C3, C4, etc. So they are waiting somewhere. Okay, C1 maybe will be served by A, C2 will be served by B, C3 will be served by C, and C4 will be served by D, and etc. Let me make this a little bit smaller, so I like that. Okay, so I have many customers, I have many servers. I am trying to manage this process. So this is what I am going to do. My server, okay. Thank you. Did everybody sign this? Everybody is here. Ozan is not here. Okay. In my server private data section, I have the name for the server. Okay, just A, B, C, whatever. All three are them statics. So turn is, okay, turn number 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? Turn. So last served, I have to remember it somewhere. I mean, which one did I serve last? Maybe I am at the beginning. I am serving this one last. Okay. And now open is the flag that says that my restaurant is open or not. Okay. So since they are all statics, I need to initialize them at the global level. Server turn is 0, last server is 0, and server now open is true. At the beginning, I am open. So let's look at these three functions. Serve 1, okay. If I am server A, if somebody calls me serve 1 on them, I will go get one of the customers and I will serve them. Okay. So for that one, I need to find which one is the last served, and if the restaurant is open, okay, I will find the turn and I will serve 1 people. Okay. So I will use get turn. Get turn will return me the current term of the turn of the customers. Okay, as I said, it is a little bit silly. It is not complicated. Just I keep telling you lots of stuff. And let's look at the main function. Okay, so I have created 2 servers, server A and B, server A and B. Good. And I have a loop, do while loop. Somebody comes in my restaurant. I ask them, how many people are you? Okay. They tell me that, for example, I have 3. So they told me that they have 3. So what I am doing is here, if you are 3, then I am going to put you in this box 1, 2, 3. So I am going to give you 3 C slots. Okay. So every time I call this get turn, I am getting a new turn. You are number 1, you are number 2, and you are number 3. And then in the same loop, I ask the server 1 and server 2 to serve 1 customer. And I keep repeating this loop as long as the restaurant is open. Okay, still open. I'm going to check what we have in this get turn and still open. So how many functions do we have? Get turn and still open. Let's look at this get turn. What does the get turn do? So get turn. Okay. So this is as simple as the constructor takes the letter name and assigns to the name. Get turn is a static function. Okay, it just increments the turn and returns it. Still open returns. Okay, still open is another static function, and it returns now open. That's it. And the serve one is the function, non-static function. Okay, that serves one of the customers. So if I am open, if the last served is less than turn, then I will increment last served by one because I am serving one people. And my name is server. I am now serving last served. That's it. And then if my last served is greater than turn equal to turn, then I am closing my restaurant. It's a simple run. How many your groups? 3. So your turns are 1, 2, 3. A is serving 1 and B is serving 2. Second loop iteration. How many in your group? 4 and 5. Okay, 2. So your numbers are 4 and 5. One of them is serving 3 and the other one is 4. And in the third iteration, how many in your group? 0. So I am not assigning new turns now, but there is somebody to serve in the queue. So server A is serving 5, but for server B, there is nothing to serve. Okay. For server 1, it doesn't work. So what is it going to do? It is not going to say I am serving something. It will just assign this false, and then my while loop will close. As I said, I mean, well, it's not a nice example to tell you about the static data members or function members, but it is the example from the book, so I included it. If you like to work on the static data members, static functions, just check this program. This is a better example. Just counts the number of objects available. Okay, good. Question for you. Should I write a getter for length, breadth, and height, also setter length, breadth, and height? Setter and getter for the length, breadth, and height of this box class. Setters and getters. Should I write them?
For statics or
Who is talking? Yeah.
are we talking about static values?
No, I'm talking about this length, breadth, and height. Should I write setters and getters? Setter function and getter functions for length, breadth, and height.
I think so, because they are private.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe we should write them because after I create a box, maybe I want to change their values. I need to access them, right? That makes sense. How about this object count? Should I write a getter and setter for it? Well, if I write them, it has to be static because, right? Maybe that's correct. I mean, if I write them, it doesn't have to be static, but because object count can be accessed within non-static functions too. Should I write getters and setters, getter and setter for the object count?
No,
Why not?
because it counts the objects. And if we allow the user to set it, then what's the point?
So you are saying that I shouldn't write a setter, but getter is okay. I already write it, right? Getter is okay, get count, but setter is a bad idea here, right? Say it again, louder, everybody can hear it.
We shouldn't allow the user to change its value.
Yeah, I mean, how would I write a setter for the object count? I would say static or not static doesn't, static void set count integer k and object count gets the value of k. So what does that mean? My customer can set any value to this object count that it wants, including -5 and +7. I mean, it looks as innocent as writing the setter and getter for the height, but it is not. It is very different. Okay, so this is not about being static or not static. This is about being the function of these data members. Okay, object count is automatically updated whenever an object is created. Okay, trying to learn what the value of this object count is okay, but trying to set it is not okay, because if you let your customer change this value arbitrarily, you will be in a very bad state, right? I mean, after I make a new object, then I set that value to 17 and I ask how many boxes are there, it will say 17. Okay, so don't let your customer change this value using a setter. Don't write a setter. Okay, some people are confused about this. Whenever they write a data member, private data member, they immediately write their setters and getters. Okay, we never said this. Yes, setters and getters are useful whenever they are appropriate, but for some times you should never write a setter, especially a setter, for some data members. And sometimes it is not appropriate for you to write getters either, but getters are more, I mean, you cannot go wrong by calling a getter, right? Just getter is a getter, right? You don't change anything, but setters are very dangerous. You are changing the values of your data members, and if that value is not supposed to change outside of your control, that's a bad thing. So always keep this in mind. I never said that you should write setters and getters for all the data members. Okay, what is the rule? Don't write anything. Okay, try to restrict your user as much as possible, but not writing length, breadth, and height setters and getters kind of makes this class not that useful. Okay, so I write them for the length, breadth, and height. I have a getter for the get count. Okay, I have a getter for the get count. No problem, but writing a setter for the get count is a bad idea. And if you do that mistake during the exams, you will lose lots of points. Okay. Okay, you might say that I write the setter. Okay, if the user uses it in a wrong way, it is his problem. No, this is not the way to write programs in object-oriented philosophy. Okay, don't let your customers, okay, don't allow them write wrong code. Okay, giving this functionality a setter for the object count is a bad idea. Okay, the only thing that they can do with this object count setter is bad things. Okay, so try to guide your customers in a way that they cannot go wrong with your code. Okay, good. Another question for you. Let's say I came to this code and I erased this static keyword here. Nothing else. I just erased it. Would this code compile and run?
Yes, it will.
It will compile.
It will compile and run. Why? Because you are saying that object count is a static data member, and static data member can be accessed with the non-static functions, and get count is a non-static function, etc. But how about this one? How about this line? Okay, what does that mean? This means that you need an object of a class to run this function. Here, I am running this function without any objects using the name box, class name box. Okay, class name box. So if I do this line and this line will give me an error message. Maybe I can fix this one. I am going to fix this one. I am going to do this like box 1 dot get count. I can do this. So I fix this one, but there is no way I can fix this one. Why? Why I can't fix that one?
There isn't any other object.
Because there is no box objects, okay? There are no box objects available at this line because I did not create any, okay? I did not create any. So usually this is your preference. If you are dealing with these kind of static data members in your functions, make your function static so that it can be called using the class name, okay? Using the class name. This line, box get count and box one get count, will produce exactly the same result. It will call exactly the same function, but we prefer this way of calling the static functions, because when you look at it, you immediately see that get count is a static function, right? We are calling it with a class name and binary scope resolution operator, okay? So this notation and this notation calls exactly the same function, but we don't like it because this one looks like it's a regular non-static function, right? It is not actually, it is a static function, so call it this way. Okay, good. Any questions about the statics? They are not complicated, but you need to practice a little bit. You need to practice. And this is something, yeah, okay. Remember, I was kind of I didn't feel very well about these functions here. Remember these 4 functions, 1, 2, 3, 4. They don't work on the data, right? They don't work on any of these data, but I made them by part of my class because I don't want to make them globals. Some people say that, why don't we make these static? Can I make them static? Static private function members, 4 static functions. Would this work? Well, since they are private, nobody is supposed to use them outside of my class, yeah. But, I mean, does it make any sense to make these static?
Make more efficient.
No, there is nothing about the efficiency here.
No, they are working on the data of the object, so making them static.
None of them works on the data of the objects.
No, dollars part returns the...
Dollars part gets this amount and it takes the integer part of it. None of them works the data, none of them works on the private data or data of the object. It works on the parameters. That's it. So does it make any, I mean, okay, I'm going to give you the answer. Yes, it compiles and it runs, no problem. But does it make sense to mark them as static? Would this give me any advantage? And I'm not talking about the efficiency. Why should I make them static? It compiles and runs, but as you have seen many times, I mean, compiling and running doesn't mean much for many cases. Just because it compiles, that doesn't mean that I should do it. But should I do it?
Maybe if you want to let the customer know that these are not really part of the class, so to say.
Yeah, but how am I doing that?
With labeling it as static.
Static doesn't mean that it's not part of the class, but it's a special part of the class. So by making these functions static, what am I saying to the compiler? I am saying to the compiler that these 4 functions will not access any of these 3 data, right? Isn't that what I am saying? I am saying that these four functions are statics. They will not directly access these three data members. Okay? They won't. They can't. Okay? If I access them by coincidence, by accident, I will get a compiler error from the compiler saying that these are static and you are trying to access this rate or account cents and dollars. Okay? So by marking them as static, I am doing myself a favor. It's like using a const. Why do I use a const? I tell the compiler that I promise I am not going to change this one. If I change it, just give me a error message. This is the same thing. By marking these as static, I promise to the compiler that I will not change any of these, or I will not access any of those. Okay? So it makes more sense to make this static. So it kind of makes me feel a little better about these four functions, but still I don't like them being part of my class. Because again, encapsulation says that, okay, put your data, related data, and functions together in the same capsule, okay? So I said that this is my data. Those are the functions that are going to work on that the data. How about these? And I am telling the compiler that these will not work on the data, right? But it is better than saying nothing about. I mean, it is better than making this the same category as this welcome. Okay. How about this? If I say static welcome, where would I get the error message? This will not compile. Where would I get the error message? Let's go to the. This is the header of the welcome. Okay. Line 31, and let's go to the implementation of welcome. Welcome is welcome. Where is welcome? Oh, I forgot about yesterday. This one there should have been. You guys are not telling me anything. Okay. So where would I get the error message for this welcome? In the implementation or in the declaration here, line 31 or anywhere here?
I think in declaration because it returns nothing. It's void.
What? It returns void? What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
First, I will get something const. Okay. Can a static be a const? A function? Can a static function can be a const function?
It can.
It can?
It can.
It cannot. Why not?
Because it has no access to.
Who is talking? Oh, you're talking. Okay. Okay.
It has no access to object instance.
Yeah. Yeah. What does exactly? What does the const mean? Const means that I am not going to change in your object, right? Well, statics cannot access the const anyway. So that's one thing. Okay. If I remove this, where would I get the error message? Okay. Maybe keep it there. Maybe I ask the same question here. Can I make this set rate static? Okay, since this is not a const. Okay, line 28, or go to the implementation of set rate. Set rate, yeah. Line 28 or line 177 to 185. Where will I get the error message? Anybody from the online audience? So nobody is reading the book. Nobody is doing the exercises that I am telling you. This is an easy question.
I think 178 we get compiler
Line 78 here,
or 180.
180. So what is 170, 180?
Yes. Because
Why?
we are trying to access member
Yeah,
rate of class.
not 80 but 179 because new, oh yeah, exactly. New rate is the parameter. Yeah, rate is a non-static data member, and the set rate is now a static function. Static functions can't access, read or write the non-static data members. Rate is a non-static data member, regular data member, right? So I will get an error message here. You cannot have access to rate. Okay, so don't do this as a bad idea to make this static. Always try this. Okay, try these kind of stupid stuff. Put static in the front, set const at the end, and try to guess what the compiler is going to, how the compiler is going to behave. That would be a very good exercise. Some people come to me and ask me, I did this and I get the compiler, and I ask them, what is the compiler error? They say, I don't know. I mean, read the compiler error and understand it, why it is giving you that error. Okay, error is important, but what kind of error, the type of error is as important as the error itself. Okay, so try to understand why compiler is giving you that message. It will make you understand why this is happening, and try to make the compiler give error messages for you. Okay, if I do this, what's going to happen? I am getting an error message, but this is not the error message that I am getting. Okay, this is not the error message that I think I should get. That's way to learn the compiler and the program itself. Okay, so if you summarize about the statics, as I said before, static data members are the data members that are shared by the objects of that class. There is only one copy of that data. And static functions are the functions that can only work on that kind of data. So if you summarize, this is just two simple sentences. But if you translate these two sentences into programming, there will be lots of complications. There will be lots of details, right? So understanding the first part is important, why it is needed, what's the definition of static. Second part is as important as the first part, but the second part needs lots of programming, lots of remembering the details of C, C++, and etc. Okay, you have to manage both sides, understand what it is, what static is, understand how we do that in C++. Good? Well, when I'm saying good, I will move on, but it is not good. I am not getting any answers. Maybe people are shy. Maybe they are sleeping at home. I don't know what's going on. But this is not going very well, I'm telling you. I mean, this is week number 5, and it looks like we are going to do our midterm, not next week, but the other week, right, on Monday. And I think we have already reserved our spot. So, I mean, at this phase, I expected you would do more. Okay? Okay, you have a question?
Yes, about the syntax of static. For example, when we look at line 38, it looks like the
30,
function dollar part returns a static integer. But it actually means it returns an integer, but function itself is static.
Well, I mean, you know what static cast is, right? What do you mean static integer? What is static integer?
I don't know, actually. But
well, we talked about this casting, right? This is typecasting.
yes.
Instead of using those parentheses of C to typecast for one type to another one, we use static casts.
No, I mean, why the syntax of C++ doesn't say that that static keyword should be before or after the constant on line 38.
You mean that why are we putting the static in front of the function definition, not after const?
Yes.
Well, it is the grammar that they have chosen. And in C, remember C, in C we have statics, and statics are done that way. Static variables are declared this way. It's like long integer or what external integer, something like what's a modifier, right? So a const integer, so static integer. Since I am declaring the static variables that way, static functions maybe should be declared that way too. And the meaning of static function in C is a little bit different. Remember, let's look at this example. Okay, this getTurn is a static function, and I put the static keyword in front of turn, but at the global level, lines 16, 18, and 16, 17, and 18, I don't put the static keyword in front of them, or I don't put the static keyword in front of this getTurn, because the meaning of static at the global level is a little bit different. Okay, so in C, the functions can be static functions at the global level, but their meaning is a little bit different, and I won't talk about it. So in order to get rid of that confusion, they chose it that way. I mean, it is not up to us to question why they did it this way or that way. It's like the language, right? We talk Turkish. Turkish starts with a noun, okay? You say ben eve gidiyorum, noun, object, and verb. Okay, English is like I am going home, noun, verb, and object, right? Why is the order different? I mean, they made that decision a long time ago, and I keep using these two languages, and it is almost the same thing for us too. Sometimes decisions are made, there are reasons for it, sometimes silly reasons or not that silly reasons, but we have to accept it that way, and we have to use it that way. So, I mean, you cannot get to say I'm going to switch the places of these two keywords. Okay. Any other question? Yes.
I didn't understand why we can't use const and static together.
Why can't we use const and static? What does a const function do? It says that I am a function of this class, right? Okay, for example, this volume is a const function. They didn't write it, but it's a const function. It doesn't change. It says that I am not going to modify length, breadth, and height, right? That's what okay. For a static to be a const, okay, it doesn't make any sense because this get count doesn't have any access to length, breadth, and height, right? Okay.
So we can use it, but there is no logic.
Doesn't make any sense. Okay.
So there is no compiler.
Well, the compiler should give you an error message. I'm not sure if that gives it or not. Okay, you might say that maybe the meaning of const is that I am not going to modify this object count. Maybe the meaning of it. But no. The meaning of const is I am not going to modify this object. Okay, good. So try it. Try if you are getting an error message or not. Okay, so at the end of this chapter, there is something familiar. Well, before that, the book talks about nested and local classes. Okay, you may define a class inside another class, like a struct within a struct. Okay, I have a class named outside. It has a private integer. But see, this integer is a private. Why? Because by default, everything is private inside the class. Okay, so they wrote it this way. I have a class outside. There is a private integer. In my public section, I have a nested class definition. Okay, inside this nested class, I have two statics, two public statics, and two non-static functions, f and g. This is just a stupid example again, just to show that nested classes are allowed in C++, and you can use them. Okay, Since these two are statics, I need to initialize them. So how do I initialize it? The class nested has an integer in it. Nested has an integer, but where is the class nested? Class nested is inside the outside class. And I'm going to initialize it with 5. I am going to implement this function f. Function f is part of the nested class nested, but class nested is part of the outside class, and I'm returning 0. Okay, now I can do this. It looks like it is taking a long time to type all of that. Okay, I am making a type def outside nested. Okay, I will call it now out nest. Okay, now I am going to initialize this second one y. Out nest y is a static variable. Okay, I am going to initialize it with 10. I am now going to implement this function named g, and it is returning 0. Okay. So nested classes are possible. This is a public class. Okay, this is a public class. You can make your classes private. If you have a nested private class, nobody can make objects of your classes outside of your class. Okay. If the class is a private. If it is public, then you are fine. Everybody can do it. It's called nested and local classes. Okay, any questions so far?
Can I ask something?
Sure.
Nested and nested classes and inherited classes are the same thing or different?
I don't know what inherited classes are.
Okay.
Can you tell me what inherited classes are?
For example, we say class outside and we have other class inherited by outside class.
No, I did not understand what inherited class is. Sorry. I will answer that question when I learn about inheritance.
Okay.
I didn't read that chapter yet. Okay. So let me take like 2 minutes of your time. I have 1 minute, and I will take 2 minutes of your time. Vectors. We already looked at the vectors, including the vectors and sets and linked lists and etc. Okay. Vectors are kind of arrays in C++. They are as efficient as arrays, but they are more flexible to use, such as they can freely grow and shrink, no problem, during the program execution. And they have a very nice interface. They have defined all the possible constructors and etceteras and the getters and all kinds of other functions available. Okay. Again, to use a vector, you use this notation, and we have a simple example here. Okay, include vector header. I have a vector v. Its initial, so it looks like it is using the no parameter constructor, and the definition of no parameter constructor is this v has 0 elements in it. Okay, there is actually v has space for maybe 5 integers, but now I store 0 elements in it. Okay, and with a loop, I keep getting some integers from the keyboard, and I push back all those integers to this vector, and every time I push back, I print the size of the vector to the screen, and I print the value that I push back. So this will increase the vector size, no problem, and I don't have to deal with the reallocation and deletion and copying stuff. So this might be a little bit at line 13. It is a simple line for me, but there are many things happening under the hood. If there is no space, then I have to allocate it, copy the old one, delete the old one, and etc. So, but for me it is abstracted. It is just pushback, as simple as a pushback. Size, again, it might be a difficult thing to implement, but I don't know. Then after I entered all of those integers, I run this loop from 0 to size. Okay, and I print them one by one using this index operator. Okay, so this is a sample run. I added 2, 4, 6, and 8. So size grows, and I have entered these values. Simple example, we did this before. Okay, the book has this example, the vector efficiency. There is a function named capacity. It is different from size. Okay, capacity will tell you how many places for for integers are available inside my vector. It doesn't tell you the size. Well, obviously capacity has to be equal to or greater than the size, but it is not the same as the size. Okay, it says that I have space available over 5 integers inside this vector. So if you do a pushback, okay, it will be very easy for me to push it back. But if the capacity is same as the size, what does that mean? The vector class has to allocate new space, so that pushback is going to take some time, because allocation new space, deletion of the old one, and etc. And if you like to reserve some space for your vector, and you can use this reserve function. So you are saying that I have a vector, its initial size is 0, no integers in it, but I like to reserve 12, 32 integers for it. Okay, so I have space for 32. When I do the pushbacks there, they will be very efficient for 32 integers. After that, I will need reallocation. So you can play these kind of games with your vectors to make your code more efficient, maybe. Because I mean, it doesn't make any sense to push back 30 integers one after the other, because each one has a potential to reallocate the vector. But at the beginning, you will say that, okay, reserve me some 10 more spaces. Reserve me 10 more spaces. So in that case, you can very efficiently add 10 more integers to this vector. Okay, so there is another function, resize, v.resize. It resizes your vector to some other value, and I don't remember what happens to your previous values if the new size is smaller than the old one. Okay, it takes another integer. Just read the vector documentation and you will understand it better. Okay, that's it for this week. What date is your due date for the homework number 2?
Today.
Today?
Yes.
Really? Or then maybe I should make your next homework available today. Before the midterm time, you should get going. Okay. So I am not. I mean, I hope you are not asking because you are shy. If you are not shy, you are in trouble. Okay. Nobody's asking me questions. Nobody's answering me my questions right. Okay. And these are not difficult questions. These are simple questions. And the midterm will be 2 hours, 3 hours long. Okay. You won't have any time to think about what was available, what was not, and is it allowable, it is not allowable, because it will take you 2 hours only to write all that code. Okay, so you should know everything by heart so that you don't have to think, you don't have to remember, try to remember about the details of the coding. Okay, so the best way to learn about this stuff or study about this stuff is try to write all these examples yourself without looking at the slides or the book. Okay? Remember the definition of the program and try to write the same thing yourself. Okay, that's it. I'll see you on Monday.
May I ask you?
Sure.
Will it be also improving on the first assignment, or is it going to change?
Yeah, it will be exactly the same homework. Now this time we are going to ask you to write the same program using a class. No global functions, everything should be part of a class, and you will use inner classes too. Okay? So you are not going to build on top of your homework 1 or 2, okay? You are starting from the scratch. The same problem, the only thing is you are going to write it in C++ or object-oriented C++. Okay.
Ödevle ilgili bir şey soracaktım.
Evet.
Bu üçüncü